And we are live again. The continuance as I had to answer a phone call. But John Gruden, the whole thing that's going his way is he's not denying that he messaged or emailed those things to the vice president of NFLPA, or the president of NFLPA, Troy Vincent. He's not. He's not denying that. He's suggesting that he was the scapegoat, that they were looking into the Daniel Snyder situation, and John Gruden was put in the middle of it, and so they just decided to get rid of him to see if the Snyder stuff would get swept under the rug, and that didn't happen. So, but that's not really what it is. Contracts are more because team players want more of a guarantee that they'll be there. Like, you're seeing a lot of contracts that teams are giving 4-year contracts, and you're there a year and a half, 2 years, then you're gone because there's no guaranteed money left. And players are fed up by that. So they're suggesting that there's collusion in order so owners don't give guaranteed contracts because there's not a lot of them around. We talked about Kirk Cousins, how he got bet on himself and he got 2 guaranteed contracts on the Minnesota Vikings. And we talked about Tyron Smith, the left tackle of the Dallas Cowboys, who, by the way, it looks like he's gonna play in like a month after tearing his hamstring, which we never thought was possible. I never thought it was possible. Like, that's a pleasant surprise, I guess you could say. A great and early Christmas gift, I guess you could say, for the Dallas Cowboys to get their all-pro left tackle back. But he was given a guaranteed contract, and it's actually been very helpful for the Cowboys because his contract's so large, and they found out they can put multiple more years on it, and then put voidable years on it. So they are not really having to change the contract. So Tyron Smith is technically on the same contract that he was drafted on. He's 31, 32 years old. He's 30. He, if I remember correctly, yeah, he's 31 years old. So he's been doing this for a long time, but he's on the same contract practically because they've extended off of what his when he was drafted. He was a first round draft choice, so he had those 5 years. 2 years in, 3 years in, the Cowboys decided to do a 7-year contract, and they've been working off that ever since, and that's what they've done. So the Cowboys have done a really good job on that. It's a contract that just keeps on giving. So if he does decide to hang it up after this year, next year, or whenever, he can do it. So, and you wonder, well, then how is this a bad thing? And to be honest, I don't know how this is a bad thing. I'm not a person, like, obviously, it's not my money to spend. Like, if I'm given $2 billion tomorrow and I buy an NFL team and I have $2 billion left over. So, okay, let's do it this way. The Commanders look like they're going to be up and they're going to have to sell. So, say they sell, because right now the price I believe is 6 or 7 billion. So, say I buy the Washington Commanders. I have 2 billion left over. I am doing other things of that I'm getting more money besides running a football team. And I go and I'm saying, why wouldn't I just do guaranteed contracts? Because on top of all that, they don't count really against the salary cap. Deshaun Watson's contract doesn't really count against the salary cap. He's making league minimum according to the salary cap. That's what he's doing. He's on the salary cap for $1 million out of the multi-millions he's making because they're guaranteed. So it helps the team out because they're not having to worry about the salary cap. They can be a little more aggressive if they want. So that's what they're doing, and I don't understand how that's a bad thing, but again, it's not my money. Now, I also want to suggest this because the Raiders are in this issue. There was talk of why Josh McDaniels could in fact stay for next year because there was a interesting thing that Mark Davis, the owner of the Las Vegas Raiders, said that I thought was very interesting. Mark Davis went and said that Josh McDaniels is doing an excellent job. Where is he doing an excellent job? I have no idea. And according to a report, they cannot fire him because they're still paying John Gruden and the quote unquote cash poor. What they mean by that is they don't have the money to fire McDaniels and bring in a new coach. Now, the way I understand it, like the Matt Patricia going back to New England, he wasn't named coordinator this year. The reason why they did that is so wasn't Joe Judge. The reason why they did that was because they are still getting paid by their respective teams. So not labeling them a coordinator forces those teams to pay him or to pay them. So they're making little to no money as an assistant, and yet they're making a lot of money because they're still technically a head coach of their said team, the Giants and the Lions, respectfully. The same thing is happening for John Gruden. But his contract is guaranteed. So unless there's a settlement that's drawn, the Raiders are going to have to pay John Gruden $100 million over 10 years, fully guaranteed. And when they got halfway through it, when he left, he was in his third year. So they have to pay him $70 million, including this year. And then you got to pay the interim coach, which was Rich Bisaccia. You still got to pay him. And I believe, I'm not 100% on this, I believe Jack Del Rio's contract was null and void, but I'm not positive. So they could still be working on that too. So, and bringing McDaniels, who was the highest paid offensive coordinator, he was making $4 million as an offensive coordinator. He was making half of what Bill Belichick makes. That's how insane this was. So it took a hefty price for him to go to the Raiders. So therefore, they cannot fire him, and they probably won't fire him for the long term. That's just the way it's going to be. Next up, the Panthers have made a decision on their starting quarterback as they've decided to start Sam Darnold at quarterback in week 12. And I think this is what's happening. Sam Darnold, when you would put in this mix, you look at the three quarterbacks, besides Matt Corral, who did not play this year because he broke his foot and he was out for the year. You had on your roster Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, PJ Walker. Sam Darnold, we all saw what happened. He didn't play well. He got hurt in preseason. Hasn't played well. Baker Mayfield started the year, didn't look good. The team looked bad. They had Christian McCaffrey, Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore, and yet they couldn't do anything. If you are the Panthers, you then went to PJ Walker, you got rid of Matt Rhule, who we'll talk about in a second. It started to work, and then PJ got hurt. Steve Wilkes, the interim coach. Sam Darnold was the one player that was on the injury, on the IR for the whole season up to this point. He was activated. Baker started last week. I mean, okay. And then now Sam's gonna go. This is more for let's see how he does. Let's see how he does. If it works, great. Doesn't work, you won't be here next year. And for Sam Darnold, that's the case. He won't be here next year, if I remember correctly. Because I don't. Actually, no, he would be. So it's a whole thing. But you're trying to show the next regime what your job truly is, and would they keep you? Would they have the willingness to keep you here for the long term? And then we talk about Matt Rhule. Matt Rhule was this player coach idea that he decided to come up with from he was at Temple, was at Baylor before he took the job in Carolina. And he was on Good Morning Football yesterday, and he said he was trying to be so much of head coach Matt Rhule or head coach Rhule, not Coach Matt. And he went and finally decided in 2.5 years, so a year and a half, 2 years into his coaching career as the Carolina Panthers head coach, to then just decide, I'm going to go back to Coach Matt. And I'm going to get together with Shaq Thompson. I'm going to get together with Christian McCaffrey and a lot of these star players. And they aired this on Pat McAfee show yesterday. And over the season, Pat McAfee show has brought in a lot of players who don't play anymore, who go on the show and talk about various things, about their respective positions. And AQ Shipley was on the show and couldn't keep a straight face. He was laughing that Matt Rhule had the guts to go on Good Morning Football and say this. And he said, it took you a year and a half, 2.5 years to figure out you need to have better relationships with these players. I was thinking back, and I thought about Bobby Petrino. Bobby Petrino went and became the Falcons head coach when the year Michael Vick got arrested, when Michael Vick was in Atlanta. When he got arrested, Bobby Petrino thought he had a quarterback, and Vick gets arrested. He then decides to work with the three quarterbacks who had, I believe, at most 16 touchdowns to 18 interceptions, I believe is what it was. So he didn't have a good relationship with any of the players. They weren't allowed to talk when they were eating in the lunchroom. They weren't allowed to talk on the bus. They weren't allowed to do anything. And all these players are like, hello? How are we going to build chemistry together if we don't get on the same side, if we don't stay on the same page? Because it's not just NFL always concerned about, well, we got families. Hey, well, we're going to do this. What are we going to do this? How are we going to do this? Or then the next answer would be, you know, how do we get on the same page on this route? How can we do this? How can we do this better? And Bob Petrino would not allow that. So none of them got on the same page. There was no music. There was nothing. So everyone disliked him. And then he left. He left and he wrote a letter. He couldn't go and tell his team that he was leaving. He went and wrote a letter and put it in their lockers with a fake signature. And one of the players put the word coward on it. He put the word coward. He scribbled out the signature and put the word coward. He said, this person never had any envision. He had no vision as a coach. He thought he was a great coach that everyone should respect when no one cares about what you did in college, what you did at Louisville. No one cares. The same thing happened with Matt Rhule. No one cares what you did at Temple. No one cares what you did at Baylor. You went to Carolina. I understand your quarterbacks were not great, but you went to Carolina. You didn't draft. You didn't get people with a chemistry. You didn't give them a good relationship, and now you're expecting that I can just go become Coach Matt again. Players see through that facade. If you had been Coach Matt the whole time, maybe it's a different story. But you were Coach Rhule for the longest time, and then just said, I'm going to be Coach Matt again. Coach Matt was fun. He didn't care. He wore the cargo shorts and everything like that. He wore the visors, the sunglasses, everything. No one's going to care. No one cares. When you became Coach Rhule, that's what they knew you by. And when you cracked eventually and went back to the original you, they liked that person, but that person was gone for so long they didn't know him. And that's why you were fired. Because week 4 you were canned for that reason. Because you could not connect to these players. You know, as he said, I never lost the locker room. Kinda did. Kinda did. You were the worst team probably in that division. Including Atlanta. Was probably a little better than you. The records probably didn't say it, but they were a little better than you. Now, moving on to the preview of the Thanksgiving games. We'll start with the Bills versus the Lions. They're giving the Lions plus 9.5. I think the Bills win this, but the Lions keep things close. And the thing about the Lions, they play hard. They play very hard. And they expect it. So I think everyone says this game's a blowout. I don't think it is. I just don't think so. The Lions find a way to keep this close. Bills will win, but the Lions keep this close. Next up, Giants versus Cowboys. The Cowboys are favored by 9.5. That's very high. It was 7, and then a couple of days ago it went to 9, and now it's 9.5. Now, there's a lot of key injuries. Adoree Jackson is out. Their starting safety is out. The wide receiver Robinson, he's out for the year. He tore his ACL last week. The backup tackle is out. The center has a neck injury, or the backup tackle has a neck injury. The center has a jaw injury, which could be considered neck. I don't know exactly how that could all work.